I said almond milk. Austin snapped at the intern, shoving the coffee back like it was poison. Not this regular garbage. Just like that, day one of his corporate takeover started with a tantrum over dairy creamer in a $9 latte. I watched from 3 desks away, pretending to review quarterly supply chain reports while this 28-year-old tornado threw his first office hissy fit. Name's Tony Castellano, 52 years old, and I've been at Norval Systems for 14 years. Started when we still used paper timesheets, and our IT department was one guy named Steve, who moonlighted at Best Buy. I don't mention that to show off. I mention it because I've seen corporate storms blow through this place before, but nothing like Austin Pemberton. Fresh MBA, designer everything, and a father who practically dragged him in by his $2,000 briefcase. Richard Pemberton, our VP of Business Development, announced that Austin would be shadowing department leaders to bring fresh digital perspectives to legacy operations. Translation: his kid was going to hover, interrupt, and lecture people who'd been keeping this place running since he was making TikToks in high school. By 2 p.m. that first Monday, Austin had already reorganized our project board, removed my team lead's name from a presentation, and asked in a meeting if I'd ever considered early retirement. I smiled. Only every Monday morning. He laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. At first, I figured this was just another corporate fashion show. You know the type. Flash over substance, buzzwords over results. Austin had them all: synergize, disrupt, optimize, digital transformation. He peppered every sentence with that self-satisfied grin that made you want to staple your own ears shut. But by Thursday, he was making real moves. He invited himself into a defense contract review I'd been managing for 6 weeks, insisted on co-presenting, and pitched them some streamlined efficiency cascade that made zero operational sense. When the client pushed back, he blamed our legacy systems, which apparently meant me and my team. I kept my face neutral. After 20 years in the Army and another 14 in corporate America, I'd learned that the quietest guy in the room usually remembers the most. And brother, I was remembering everything. Every passive-aggressive email, every time he called me big guy in meetings, every eye roll when I asked for actual data instead of PowerPoint poetry. See, here's what Austin didn't know about my background. I spent 2 decades as a logistics specialist in the Army, got out as staff sergeant, and maintained my security clearance specifically for defense contract work. The Griffin Technologies account I managed was worth $15 million annually. The North Star defense contract brought in another $8 million. My department handled $25 million in operations budget, and I knew every supplier, every delivery schedule, and every cost variable by heart. Austin saw an old guy who talked slow. I was actually a walking database with clearance levels he couldn't touch. By week 2, he'd reassigned 3 of my staff to his innovation projects and started adding his initials to our budget requests. That's when I began forwarding copies of my emails to a private encrypted folder. Call it insurance. Old military habit. Always keep your after-action reports clean and documented. I wasn't stupid. People whispered in the break room, "He'll burn out in a month, just wait it out." But I'd seen what happens when you underestimate ambition wrapped in daddy's credit card. Something about the way Austin moved, chomping gum during client calls, forwarding confidential defense docs from his iPhone, calling our CFO dude, told me this wasn't going to fade quietly. This wasn't just another VP's kid testing the waters. This was a demolition crew in Italian leather, and he had his sights set on dismantling everything I'd built. The thing about guys like Austin is they mistake politeness for weakness. When I said, "Yes, sir," or "I'll look into that," he heard submission. What he should have heard was a man with 20 years of military discipline choosing his battles carefully. I'd been documenting everything since day one, not because I was paranoid, but because in the Army we called it intelligence gathering. Every edit Austin made to shared documents got logged. Every policy he claimed to update got time-stamped. When he started hosting innovation workshops with junior staff, basically loyalty tests where anyone not invited got marginalized, I quietly saved the attendance lists and follow-up assignments. The real red flag came when Austin somehow gained access to classified sections of our defense contracts. These were documents requiring secret clearance, which he definitely didn't have. I'd spent years building relationships with our security compliance officer, so I knew the protocols. Austin was either breaking federal law or someone was helping him break it. I sent a casual email to our security team. "Hey folks, just checking. Has anyone updated the clearance access for the Griffin and North Star accounts? Want to make sure our compliance is tight. The response came back in 20 minutes. No changes to authorized personnel list. All access restricted to cleared individuals only. That's when I knew Austin was playing way out of his league. He wasn't just stealing credit or undermining authority. He was potentially committing crimes. And Daddy's VP title wouldn't protect him from federal investigators. I started a new folder on my encrypted drive, Security Violations Documentation. Every time Austin accessed classified materials, every screenshot he took with his phone, every confidential document he forwarded, it all went into the file with timestamps and source tracking. The funny thing about military training is it teaches you patience. You don't just react to enemy contact. You observe, gather intelligence, identify weaknesses, then strike when you have overwhelming advantage. Austin thought he was hunting me. Really, I was studying him like a target acquisition exercise. And the target was painting himself bright red every single day. The first time Austin crashed one of my team meetings, he brought donuts. That's how it always starts, right? Bribery in frosting form. He waltzed in like he owned the oxygen, dropped the box on our conference table and said, "Don't mind me, just here to observe and learn." That was the lie. By week 2, he wasn't observing anymore. He was sitting at the head of my table, hijacking agendas, correcting my people mid-sentence, and drawing nonsense on the whiteboard like we should all feel grateful to witness his genius. He once sketched a flowchart shaped like a pyramid and called it the velocity funnel. My logistics coordinator whispered, "That's just a triangle." Didn't matter. Austin wasn't there to learn, he was there to perform. His favorite trick was making people disappear. Started small. My calendar invites went missing. My name got dropped from email chains. I'd ask about a document we were waiting on, and someone would say, "Oh, Austin handled that already." Handled meaning he'd blown it up and left glitter in its place. Here's where the timeline gets important. About 6 weeks before Austin arrived, I'd started working on a comprehensive proposal for our defense contract operations. Project Cornerstone, a complete restructuring of our fulfillment pipeline. I'd been putting in 2 hours every night after work, running cost projections, efficiency models, even consulting our underused SAP modules that nobody else bothered learning. The whole thing would shave 12% off our $25 million operations budget without layoffs. Practically alchemy in this economy. But here's the key detail. Austin had no idea this project existed. It was my personal initiative, stored on my encrypted drive, never mentioned in meetings. I tried the professional route first, scheduled a one-on-one with Austin to align expectations. He showed up 20 minutes late, chewing gum, and said, "Don't stress, Tony. I've already got a read on your department." A read, not an analysis, not a strategy brief, a read. Like he was picking paint colors, not evaluating $25 million in annual operations. Then came his nuclear option. My access to the Griffin and North Star defense contracts, accounts I'd managed since their inception, vanished overnight. No warning, no handoff meeting, just gone. When I tried logging in, the system said access denied. I walked down to IT. Steve, still there after all these years, gave me that look people save for lost dogs and canceled flights. "Sorry, Tony. Access groups got updated this morning. VP's office requested it directly." VP's office, not Austin's name. Just the shadow of Daddy's title, swinging behind him like a wrecking ball in a $3,000 suit. Now here's where Austin made his biggest mistake. He didn't just want my access, he wanted my work. Somehow he'd gotten wind of Project Cornerstone, maybe through one of my reassigned staff members, maybe through document scanning software, but he knew I had something valuable cooking. I cornered Richard Pemberton in the hallway that afternoon. Politely, calmly, like a man who knew every word could be recorded and forwarded before he finished speaking. Richard blinked behind his designer glasses. "Oh, that. I'm sure it's just a systems update. Austin's learning the ropes. Sometimes things shift during organizational evolution. Evolution. Corporate speak for we're letting my kid play with the controls and hoping nobody gets crushed. That's when I made a decision that would save my career and destroy his. I contacted our security compliance officer directly. Not through channels, not through my supervisor. Direct communication. "Hey, Sarah, this is Tony Castellano. I need to report a potential security violation. Someone without proper clearance has been accessing classified defense contract materials. I kept it professional, factual. No emotions, No accusations. Just data. Sarah's response was immediate. Send me everything you've documented. We'll need to investigate immediately. See, this is where Austin's privilege became his weakness. He'd grown up believing rules were suggestions, that daddy's influence could fix any problem. But federal security violations aren't corporate politics, they're criminal matters. And his father's VP title meant nothing to Department of Defense investigators. Next morning, my team lead Patricia pulled me aside. Austin just overrode the logistics tracker for our Q4 shipments. Put in his own vendor without running cost analysis. I didn't even flinch. Just opened my laptop and started quietly downloading access logs. Every edit, every permission change, every overwritten note. Tagged them with timestamps and file paths. Saved them in my encrypted archive. But here's the beautiful part. Austin thought he was being clever, but every move he made was creating a digital paper trail. Every time he accessed classified documents without clearance, the system logged it. Every time he forwarded confidential information to his personal email, it got tracked. Every unauthorized vendor change, every budget modification, all of it documented automatically. I wasn't just building a case anymore, I was watching Austin build his own prison cell, one security violation at a time. The breaking point came during a client call with North Star Defense. Austin had somehow convinced them to let him present efficiency improvements for their contract. I sat in the corner, officially excluded but technically still responsible for the account. Austin clicked through slides that looked suspiciously familiar. Same data layout, same cost projections, same workflow diagrams I'd spent 6 weeks developing. He'd stolen my Project Cornerstone proposal, changed the name to Phoenix Initiative, and was presenting it as his own work to a client who required security clearance to even enter the building, the North Star. Procurement officer, a retired colonel named Williams, asked pointed questions about implementation timelines. Austin fumbled through answers with corporate buzzwords. It's a top-down synergy matrix with agile adaptability baked into the stakeholder optimization curve. Colonel Williams looked confused. Son, are you telling me you can reduce our fulfillment costs by 12% without impacting delivery schedules? Austin nodded confidently. Absolutely. The metrics are solid. And you developed this analysis yourself? Yes, sir. Lots of late nights and determination. That's when I made my move. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Not obviously, just setting it on the table like I was checking messages. But I captured every word of Austin claiming credit for classified work he'd stolen from someone with proper clearance. After the meeting, I had everything I needed. Video evidence of Austin presenting classified material without authorization, audio recording of him claiming credit for stolen intellectual property, and a digital trail showing exactly when and how he'd accessed documents above his clearance level. Game over. Austin just didn't know it yet. It started with sideways glances. Not the usual office gossip kind. These were strategic, calculated, like people had been briefed to see me differently. My team got quiet when I walked into rooms. Slack threads that would normally include me suddenly scrolled on without my input. Conversations paused and pivoted when I approached. Then came the HR wellness check. Just touching base, chirped Nicole from HR one Tuesday morning, clutching her notepad like it contained nuclear launch codes. We've had some feedback. Nothing formal, just a few colleagues expressing concerns. Concerns? I kept my voice level, my expression softer than butter. She crossed her legs. That maybe you've been under pressure lately, slower to adapt to some of the operational changes we're implementing. There it was. I leaned back and smiled. Not warmly, just smiled. I'm not overwhelmed, Nicole. I'm observing. She blinked. Observing? Yeah, watching how things develop. She scribbled something. Probably Tony il potential problem, speaks in riddles. I knew exactly where this was coming from. Austin had been working the hallways, framing me as the old guard, the legacy deadweight holding back innovation. He's nice, I'd overheard him say near the elevators, but slow. Doesn't get how fast business moves now. Rich, considering I once processed 3 contract modifications, while he spent an entire afternoon picking fonts for a pitch deck. But rumors, repeated enough, turn into truth. And Austin was smart about it. Never directly accusatory, just lots of concerned tones and loaded compliments. Tony has great institutional memory. Like, he remembers how we did things 10 years ago. Isn't that something? He'd call me big guy in meetings, pat my shoulder when I made suggestions, pretend it was affectionate. It wasn't. The real power play was his. Innovation workshops, brainstorming sessions with junior staff, Anyone invited felt too afraid to decline. Anyone not invited got marginalized. 3 of my top analysts were quietly reassigned to stretch roles according to Austin's memos. One burst into tears in the stairwell after being told she wasn't agile enough for the future we're building. I didn't confront him. Instead, I logged every roster change, every document he touched, every policy he claimed to optimize. Then I sent a cheerful email to Steve in IT. Hey buddy, for compliance purposes, can you send me the full audit trail of document edits in our operations folder over the past 90 days? Just want to make sure everything's aligned. Steve replied in 6 minutes. Military guys, stick together. By Friday, I had a clean stack of PDFs showing every time Austin retroactively edited shared files, often after deadlines had passed. In one document, he'd changed projected margins just enough to match his proposal claims. In another, he'd altered delivery schedules to make his vendor recommendations look more attractive. Sloppy, obvious, criminal. But I didn't escalate yet because if you escalate too early, they call it emotional. I wanted patience and receipts. Let Austin run his whisper campaign. Let him play CEO while Daddy protected him from consequences. He was counting cards with a marked deck, thinking nobody was watching. Meanwhile, my security violation report was working its way through official channels. Sarah from compliance had forwarded my documentation to DoD investigators. I got a call Thursday afternoon from a woman who identified herself as Agent Martinez, Defense Criminal Investigative Service. Mr. Castellano, we've reviewed your submission regarding unauthorized access to classified materials. We'd like to schedule an interview to discuss your observations. Yes, ma'am. Happy to help. One more thing. Until this investigation concludes, please don't discuss these matters with anyone at your company, including your supervisor. Understood. That's when I knew Austin had stepped way over the line. DCIS doesn't investigate minor policy violations. They handle espionage, contractor fraud, and security breaches that threaten national defense. Austin's little power grab had attracted the attention of federal law enforcement. The beautiful irony was that while Austin thought he was destroying my career, he was actually building the case that would end his. Every classified document he'd accessed without clearance was logged in government databases. Every time he'd forwarded defense contract details to his personal Gmail account, it created a permanent record. Every vendor he'd tried to substitute without proper vetting had triggered security alerts. I spent that weekend organizing my evidence files, not just the workplace harassment and stolen proposals, but the security violations that would put Austin in federal prison. Timestamps showing when he accessed Griffin Technologies' classified testing protocols. Screenshots of him forwarding North Star Defense's proprietary weapon specifications to unauthorized email addresses. Recorded conversations where he discussed classified contract details with people who had no clearance. Austin thought this was about office politics. Really, it was about national security. And guys like him don't get to plea bargain with the Pentagon. Monday morning brought an unexpected twist. Austin called an all-hands meeting to announce his promotion to Director of Digital Strategy. Richard Pemberton stood beside him, beaming like a proud father at graduation. As we continue evolving our operational framework, Richard said, Austin will be taking point on all technology integration initiatives. Translation, they were making his reign official before anyone could object. Austin stepped up to the podium, confident as a game show host. I want to thank everyone for their patience during this transition period. Change is never easy, but it's necessary for growth. He looked directly at me. Some of our legacy team members have struggled to adapt to new methodologies. That's natural, but we can't let nostalgia hold back progress. Legacy team members. That's what I'd become, a relic to be managed out gracefully. Austin continued his speech about digital transformation and paradigm shifts while I sat in the back row, hands folded, quietly calculating how many federal crimes he'd just confessed to in front of 200 witnesses. Every classified project he'd mentioned, every defense contract detail he'd referenced, every proprietary process he'd claimed to improve, all of it required security clearance he didn't possess. I pulled out my phone and started a voice memo. Not obviously just holding it like I was checking messages, but I captured every word of Austin describing classified defense work to an unauthorized audience. After the meeting, people avoided eye contact with me. They knew I'd been marked for elimination. Austin had publicly designated me as the old guard standing in the way of innovation. In corporate America, that's usually a death sentence. But Austin had made one critical error in his victory speech. He'd provided detailed descriptions of classified projects to people without security clearance, in a room full of witnesses, while I recorded every word. That afternoon, I called Agent Martinez. I have additional evidence to submit. Austin Pemberton just described classified defense projects in an unauthorized public forum. Send us the recording immediately. And Mr. Castellano, I think it's time we had that interview. The trap was closing. Austin just didn't know it yet. The invite hit my inbox like an afterthought. Subject, Q3, Executive Alignment Dinner. RSVP required. Sent at 8:47 p.m. on a Friday. Most people had confirmed days earlier. I stared at it longer than necessary. Not because I wouldn't go. I always attended these dinners. I managed vendor relations for 5 of the 7 executives who'd be there. My presence was as expected as the complimentary wine. But this year felt different. Austin's name was listed as co-host right under his father's. A subtle but telling detail. That week he'd been bouncing around the office like a caffeinated golden retriever. The dinner's going to be elevated this year, he told Patricia, flipping his styled hair. Real high-level stuff, not just boring chicken and quarterly reports. I didn't need a crystal ball to see what he was planning. He'd been circling me for weeks, chipping away, repositioning himself, cutting off my visibility. If the company was chess, I was the veteran piece he was trying to sweep off the board with venture capital fairy dust and a grin. So yeah, I RSVP'd. Then I started preparing. The dinner was held at the Rosewood Room, one of those upscale hotel venues where the lighting flatters bad decisions and the waitstaff judge your shoes before handing you a menu. When I arrived, Austin was already holding court near the bar in a navy suit that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. He spotted me, and his smile sharpened like a paper cut. "Well, well," he called out across the room, loud enough to silence nearby conversations. "Didn't think you'd make it, Tony. Thought maybe you were here to work security, not join the big kids' table." The laughter was instant and too loud. Someone clinked a fork against their glass. I picked up a whiskey, took a sip, and smiled back. "Just here to observe, Austin. You know how I love a good case study." His eyes narrowed. He was already moving on, greeting someone from procurement with air kisses and networking energy. I took my seat, back row, end of the table. No place card, naturally. My name had been erased from visibility, but not from obligation. I was there to witness my own public execution. Salads arrived, wine flowed. Austin made a toast about embracing disruption and said something vague about fresh leadership models. Richard nodded along like a dashboard bobblehead. Across the table, one of our clients, older guy with silver hair and a watch worth more than my car, kept glancing at me like he was trying to place my face. I clocked him earlier but hadn't connected the dots. Charles Langston, Langston Defense Solutions. He was studying me with curious eyes, not annoyed ones. Still, I waited. Dessert arrived. Austin stood again. "We've accomplished a lot this quarter," he began with pageant contestant energy, "but growth requires tough decisions. Realignment. Accountability." He tilted his wine glass toward me. The silence that followed wasn't shocked. It was expectant. They knew this was coming. I felt my pulse quicken but kept my face neutral. Then I reached into my jacket, pulled out my phone, and texted one word: ready, sent. Set the phone down, smiled, took another sip of whiskey. Let Austin enjoy his last moments of imagined power. Austin stood unprompted, dessert fork still in hand, like a prop in a one-man show. "I'd like to take a moment," he announced, "to talk about real leadership." He turned toward the junior staff table, close enough to observe, far enough to not interrupt the grown-ups. "Sometimes leadership isn't about tenure, it's about actual contribution," eyes flicking to me, like when critical deliverables get missed, when senior staff drop the ball and others have to quietly step in. He let that hang in the air like smoke. Then he turned and stared directly at me. "Tony, care to explain why the Meridian contract analysis wasn't submitted before deadline?" I blinked once. The Meridian analysis had been submitted early, complete with risk assessments and vendor comparisons. I'd even offered to walk Austin through the technical sections. He declined, said he had it handled. Handled meaning he'd deleted my version, slapped his name on a 4-slide disaster with stock photos, and submitted that instead. Now he was pretending I'd never turned mine in. I looked around the room. Patricia stared at her plate. Nicole from HR suddenly found her breadstick fascinating. Richard gave a subtle nod from the corner, arms folded like a puppet master. I could feel it, the trap closing, the staged humiliation designed not to correct but to break. This wasn't about a contract. This was about putting me in a cage in front of the zoo. I stood slowly. Not to protest, not to fight, just to look him in the eyes. "You sure about this?" I asked, voice low, the kind of question that doesn't expect an answer. Austin wavered for just a flicker. Behind him, Charles Langston tilted his head, silver hair catching the light. He was staring at me like someone trying to place a memory. Not annoyed, curious. That's when the elevator dinged like a starting gun, and every head turned. Nathan Caldwell, our CEO, walked in wearing his signature charcoal suit and that measured expression that made people sit straighter. But he wasn't alone. Beside him walked a woman in a black suit who carried herself like someone accustomed to being obeyed. The air pressure changed, literally. Agent Martinez, Defense Criminal Investigative Service. I recognized her from our phone calls, though we'd never met in person. Austin was mid-sentence about legacy mindsets versus innovation culture when he noticed them. "Oh," he chirped, adjusting his tie. "I don't think we've met." Agent Martinez didn't respond. Her eyes swept past the interns, past the executives, until they landed on me. She gave a barely perceptible nod. Nathan clapped his hands once. "Sorry to interrupt dinner, folks. We have some business to discuss." Agent Martinez stepped forward, pulling out her badge. "Austin Pemberton, I'm Agent Martinez with the Defense Criminal Investigative Service. We need to speak with you regarding unauthorized access to classified materials." The room imploded in silence. Forks froze midair. Someone whispered classified, like it was a foreign word. Austin blinked rapidly. "I'm sorry, what?" "You've been accessing defense contract documents without proper security clearance. That's a federal crime, Mr. Pemberton." Richard lurched forward. "Now wait just a minute. There must be some mistake." "No mistake," Agent Martinez said calmly. "We have video evidence of Mr. Pemberton presenting classified Griffin Technologies protocols to unauthorized personnel. We also have recordings of him describing North Star defense specifications in public forums." Austin's face went white. "That's impossible. I have access to those files. Access obtained through identity fraud and clearance violations. That's another federal crime." Charles Langston set down his wine glass and leaned back in his chair. "Well, I'll be damned," he said quietly. "You know, Nathan, when Tony here managed our account transition 3 years ago, he made sure every document was properly classified and restricted. Real professional operation." Austin turned to stare at me like I'd just peeled off a mask. "Wait, you knew about this?" I met his eyes. "I reported the security violations 6 weeks ago. Been documenting everything since day one." Agent Martinez pulled out handcuffs. "Austin Pemberton, you're under arrest for violations of the Espionage Act, specifically unauthorized disclosure of classified defense information." As they led Austin away, Richard tried to follow, shouting something about lawyers and wrongful arrest. But Agent Martinez had one more surprise. "Richard Pemberton, you're also under investigation for conspiracy to commit espionage. We'll be in touch." The room sat in stunned silence as both father and son were escorted out. Nathan turned to address the remaining guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption. As of tomorrow morning, Tony Castellano will be assuming expanded responsibilities for all defense contract operations." He walked over to where I was standing. "Everything good, son?" And just like that, 15 years of keeping our family relationship quiet came to an end. The room buzzed with whispers as people finally connected the dots. Monday morning arrived with federal agents interviewing staff and Austin's access badge deactivated permanently. By noon, the news had spread through the defense contractor community. Austin Pemberton, former director of digital strategy, was facing 20 years in federal prison for espionage. I got offered Richard's VP position, full title, and salary. But I turned it down, told Nathan I'd rather stay where I was, managing operations and keeping our security tight. Some fights you win by throwing harder punches. Others you win by letting your opponent punch himself unconscious. Austin thought he was burying me. Turns out he was just digging his own grave, one security violation at a time.